At first glance, without knowing the brand name, which one would catch your attention? Would it be the Oris Aquis or the Tudor BB58? But of course, that's not the only basis on why we buy a watch. But that first impression plays a big factor in choosing one. If you are fortunate enough to get both, then by all means, go for it. But if you are on a tight budget, then it's important to know what the differences are. Let's check what sets these two watches apart and which one I would prefer. Both of these are fantastic watches, that is why I have both. But if I have to choose one, well, you already know the answer from the thumbnail, but let's start with their dimension, beginning with the Tudor BB58. This has a 39mm diameter, 12mm of thickness, lug width of 20mm, lug to lug of 47mm, and bracelet tapers from 20 to 16mm. It has a closed case back housing its in-house automatic caliber MT5402 with a 70-hour power reserve. This was once at the top of its game when it was released. Nobody has managed to avoid the urge to get it. Its size is perfect for most wrists, and the blue bezel and dial was its weapon. Everyone was hypnotized by it, and it's safe to say that it has secured its place in the hallmark of collectible timepieces in the future. But let's talk about the one thing that I don't like about it, the bracelet. It is nice, but it's missing something, and at the same time too much of something else as well. I like that it's brushed. I don't mind the faux rivets. The shield-like design of the clasp is unique and well secured by its triple deployment mechanism. However, the long underside of the clasp is what makes it difficult for me and my 6.5-inch wrist. It is 56mm long, wider than my wrist span, and longer than its lug-to-lug measurement. I've tried some leather straps, but it doesn't suit the watch. This is meant for a bracelet. Unfortunately, it has the wrong one. Not to mention not having half links made it even more difficult to size it. I know it's a petty complaint, but it's nice to wear a watch that fits well all day long, without being too tight or constantly dangling. And now with the Oris Aquis. This is a slightly bigger watch with green dial and bezel, which has been my favorite in the last 6 months. It has a 41.5mm diameter, 48mm of lug-to-lug, 13.4mm of thickness. Lug width is 22mm, with a bracelet tapering down to 16mm and a clasp of 17.5mm. I absolutely love the bracelet on this Oris. It is extremely comfortable, brushed in the middle, and polished on the sides. But most importantly, it tapers aggressively, adding to the comfort. It has a see-through case back housing its in-house caliber 400 movement. With a 120-hour power reserve, being able to see the movement makes me appreciate the watch even more. It may not look like my Speedmaster's movement, but it's beautiful in its own symmetrical way. The case also has this rugged but fun design, which I really love. But going back to its bracelet, the Oris has half links, which made it possible to get the exact comfortable fit, and an underclasp with a normal length, and just sits nicely under my wrist. It also has a diverse extension, which will never be used, but nice to know that it's there. I wish this was a quick release instead. That would make this watch perfect. Now let's listen to the bezel action. That was 60 satisfying clicks without any play on the bezel. Now the Oris has 120 clicks, not as smooth as the Tudor. There's a little bit of wobble and the clicks are not as satisfying, which is my only gripe with Oris. The lume on these watches are both great, but I find the Oris's lume cleaner and softer on the eyes, especially at night. But I think the biggest deciding factor for me here is the bracelet. Comfort just cannot be compared between these two watches. Tapered versus not, and the polishing on the Oris is just right. I know I can change the bracelet, but it's not the same unless it fits the case, which in the case of the Tudor, it's not just a strap kind of watch. And this mysteriously long clasp just baffles me. I mean, if the Tudor was 56mm in diameter, then maybe it's justifiable, but this, for a 39mm watch, I do not know the reason behind it. Now let's check these two watches on my 6.5-inch wrist. First is the Tudor. On a video and at first glance, it seems fine, but if you are the one wearing it, it's either tight like how I am wearing it now, or a little loose if you move the micro-adjustable pin on the clasp. But this is tight. It's a bit better during winter, for the first hour, but then as soon as you move around and the day goes by, it gets uncomfortable. What a shame, because it's a nice looking watch, I love the watch, but if there are other options, then this would be a deal breaker for me. And now the Oris. I might have said this before, but one of the most comfortable bracelets I've ever worn was my Tag Heuer Aqua Racer. And this Oris is even more comfortable. It just hugs my wrist so well, and I think the Omega Seamasters bracelet could learn from this tapering. If the watch is not titanium, it should be a rule that it needs to be tapered. And for this Oris, it just works. It is beautiful. But what are the other factors on why I'm choosing the Oris Aquis versus the Tudor BB58? And I'm comparing these two because they are in the same price range and both in the diverse category. I'll approach it this way. If I am to buy a watch now, and these are my two options, I'd of course consider the price. The Tudor is 6,190 Australian dollars with no chance of a discount versus Oris's 5,400 Australian dollar price point, but always with a discount. With what I've noticed, it's usually up to 30+%. The movement. Tudor's 70-hour power reserve versus Oris's 120-hour power reserve. Accuracy-wise, the Tudor is more accurate, but the Oris is not bad either. You get 5 days of power reserve and a see-through case back, showcasing a playfully designed movement on the Oris. Tudor's dial is simple versus Oris's sunburst green dial. I love both, but I find myself staring more at Oris's sunburst dial. It radiates life and makes looking at it satisfying, but the downside is the Tudor becomes boring when you compare it with the Oris. And the bracelet, I am 100% Oris on this one. Wear time, I've said it before, it has been Oris and Oris alone raking in wrist wear time in the last 6 months. Both comes from a trustworthy brand, but Oris's overall design and what it has to offer is just so much better. But which one would you choose? Is it the bigger brand or the better watch?